Stop thinking that your power comes from your presence. Stop believing that the path to respect is through constant visibility and ceaseless availability. That narrative is a fundamental lie, a convenient cage built by society to keep you predictable, weak, and ultimately manipulable. You have been taught a moral framework that is, in reality, a precise blueprint for being used and then discarded without a second thought. Observe the two archetypes of power: the king, who is always seated on his throne, perpetually visible to every petitioner, instantly accessible for every trivial request, a static and predictable fixture in the kingdom's landscape. What is the inevitable consequence for him? He becomes nothing more than the furniture. He is expected, he is taken for granted, and he is, by sheer force of his own constancy, rendered invisible. His presence, which was intended to signify unshakable authority, instead breeds an undeniable contempt, a subtle, corrosive disrespect that grows with every predictable day. Now, turn your gaze to the king who intentionally leaves his seat for a month, a strategic, calculated, and conscious withdrawal. The kingdom does not descend into chaos. Something far more profound occurs. His absence becomes the single, most potent, and most present force in the room. Rumors, whispers, and urgent conversations spread like wildfire. His name, once ordinary, is suddenly imbued with a new, desperate significance. The world is violently forced to remember that he exists. This, precisely, is the paradox of true power that Machiavelli fully grasped centuries ago. Constant visibility breeds contempt, but strategic absence breeds reverence. You've been playing the entire game in reverse, fatally mistaking accessibility for respect and constant engagement for lasting importance. That disastrous path has only served to turn you into background noise. Now, you will learn the laws of true, sustainable, and undeniable power. The 7 principles that seamlessly transform absence from a perceived weakness into absolute psychological dominance. These are the 7 truths that surgically separate those who are merely used from those who effectively and permanently hold power. The single immutable truth that changes every calculation you make: scarcity is the only currency that never loses its worth. Principle 1. The psychology of strategic withdrawal. The act of strategic withdrawal is not a simple retreat. It is the deliberate deployment of a psychological weapon, a precise and surgical maneuver designed to create immediate and profound cognitive dissonance in the minds of others. There is a very specific type of panic that inevitably sets in when someone loses reliable, guaranteed access to you, and it is rarely the dramatic or overtly obvious kind. Instead, it manifests as a subtle, creeping unease, a low-level hum of anxiety that immediately forces you to the absolute center of their focus. They will check their messages not just once, but frantically, wondering with mounting agitation why your guaranteed reply has not materialized. They immediately begin to question the unwritten contract of your relationship and their own assumptions. What changed? Did I make a mistake? Are they ignoring me? This manufactured uncertainty is a deliberate, potent psychological imbalance, and you achieve it without speaking a single explanatory word. The core truth is that the human mind is fundamentally hostile to unfinished business. It despises unanswered questions and cannot tolerate a break in established patterns. Your constant presence was a predictable, comfortable pattern. Your availability was a guaranteed resource. Your immediate responses were a certainty. You were a fixed, immovable star in their cognitive sky. When you intentionally shatter that pattern and simply stop, their mind cannot simply move on. It becomes singularly obsessed with the disruption you created. Withdrawal does not cause you to be forgotten. It renders you utterly unforgettable, transforming you into the sole subject of their internal, anxious monologue. The human brain does not focus on what it currently holds. It obsesses, sometimes pathologically, over the value of what it suddenly and potentially has lost. You are never, in fact, more powerfully present in someone's life than in the calculated moment you consciously and strategically disappear. This is the deeper, essential truth buried within Machiavelli's analysis of the intelligent rulers. The intelligent ruler knows precisely when to be available and, critically, when to be deliberately absent. They understand that the mere act of constant visibility, of being readily and constantly available, reduces their stature to that of the ordinary and predictable. True, durable power throughout history has never been about constant accessibility. It has always been about the impossibility of guaranteed access. Their time was meticulously guarded. Their presence was a rare, precious commodity, and access to them was never an assumption but a prize to be earned. You, on the other hand, have been performing the inverse. You've been the person anyone can reach at any time, the person who drops everything to respond instantly, the person whose figurative door is perpetually left open. And what has this dangerous behavior created? A destructive cocktail of familiarity and comfort, and the entitled, dangerous assumption that you will always be there, a passive resource to be extracted at their whim. Strategic withdrawal is the surgical force that shatters this entitled assumption. It is the brutal introduction of doubt and necessary psychological distance. It forces people to confront the uncomfortable, novel possibility that you are not, in fact, perpetually available, that you might possess non-negotiable boundaries they never bothered to notice, and, most crucially, that you are not as easily controlled or predictable as they had comfortably assumed. This sudden realization is profoundly unsettling for them, and this profound discomfort is highly desirable, because discomfort is the sole psychological catalyst that forces human beings to urgently reassess value. When you are always present, always in place, always expected, you become nothing more than a part of the surrounding environment, part of the furniture that they walk past without ever truly noticing. Absence, however, breaks the powerful illusion of permanence. It is a stark, jarring reminder that your presence is a temporary gift, an earned privilege, and not a divine or guaranteed right. This profound realization that you can and might choose to stay gone terrifies them more deeply than they will ever confess. The method for communicating this profound shift is the most potent and uncompromising: silent withdrawal. It is a form of nonverbal communication so violent in its psychological impact that it conveys everything necessary without uttering a single syllable. It is the undeniable, powerful signal that something fundamental has shifted, that you are no longer operating by the old, predictable rules, and that access to you now carries conditions and a price they do not yet comprehend. They will expend tremendous cognitive energy attempting to decipher what changed, frantically replaying conversations and analyzing past interactions, wondering if they said or did something wrong. They will actively check every other available channel to determine if you have genuinely disappeared or are merely ignoring them specifically. All of this mental power, all of this intense, focused attention, is now directed entirely at you, the person who is not even physically there. This is the cold, surgical efficacy of strategic withdrawal. You become dramatically more influential, more memorable, and far more powerful in your absence than you ever were in your overexposed, ordinary presence. The emptiness you intentionally create is a psychological vacuum that forcefully pulls their attention and energy directly to you. Principle 2. The illusion of constant availability. You were trained for this destructive pattern from your earliest moments. Society taught you, through a relentless stream of cultural conditioning, that being constantly available translates directly to being a good or valuable person. The unspoken rules were simple and soul-crushing. Answer immediately when called. Show up instantly when needed. Be instantly there for everyone who demands it. Drop whatever you are doing to provide help. Never, under any circumstance, leave anyone waiting for your attention. And somewhere within that pervasive, exhausting training, you were systematically taught to abandon yourself, your own needs, and your own life. The terrifying truth is that constant availability is not a form of kindness or virtue. It is a direct path to self-destruction. It is a silent declaration to the world that your time has no inherent value, that your energy has no limits, and that your life exists primarily to serve whoever happens to demand it at that moment. This is precisely how compliance is engineered and conditioned in the masses. They successfully make you believe, through social pressure, that boundaries are inherently selfish, that the simple act of saying no makes you a fundamentally bad person, and that protecting your own time is irrefutable proof that you simply do not care about others. It is a psychological trap, and you walked right into it, driven by the fear of disapproval. Every single time you utter the word yes when your entire self screams no, you kill a vital piece of your own authenticity and self-worth. Every time you make yourself available when you desperately need rest, recovery, or focused solitude, you are actively training the world to believe that your needs and your well-being do not matter. Every instant response you provide trains people that your attention is cheap, abundant, and therefore easily disregarded. This isn't about refusing to help others. It is about the cold, hard recognition that unlimited, unquestioning availability is a form of psychological slavery. Machiavelli once observed the simplicity of men, noting their inclination to obey immediate needs, which guarantees that a deceiver will never lack victims for his deceptions. You have been the victim in this exchange. The immediate need was always someone else's problem. The deception was the powerful, insidious lie that meeting that need made you valuable. It did not make you valuable. It only made you useful. And there is a profound, life-altering difference between those two designations. Useful people get used. Valuable people get respected. When you are constantly available, you operate as a resource to be extracted, a convenient tool to be picked up when required, and immediately put down when the need passes. People do not think about tools, they simply use them. But the instant you become unavailable, the moment access to you becomes limited. When your time suddenly carries strict, non-negotiable conditions, you instantly cease being a tool. You evolve into a person they must actively consider, plan around, and respect. This crucial shift in perception does not occur because you made a grand, self-important announcement. It happens entirely because you embodied it. You simply stopped answering every single call. You stopped responding within seconds of the notification. You stopped the self-sacrificing pattern of rearranging your entire life to accommodate everyone else's chaotic schedule. And in that stark, quiet moment of withdrawal, your time suddenly, irrevocably, acquired immense meaning. Here is the truth. Nobody will ever tell you about saying yes all the time. It does not make people like you more. It makes them demonstrably respect you less. Because deep down, everyone possesses an instinctual understanding that people who stand for nothing will fall for everything. People who possess no visible, defended boundaries are consistently walked over and used. People who are incapable of saying no are perceived as having a profound lack of self-worth. You convinced yourself that being available made you important. It only made you forgettable and easily bypassed. The truly important people are notoriously difficult to reach. Important people guard their time with the ferocity of a predator. Important people understand that scarcity is the engine that generates intense demand. Your aura, that invisible field of psychological power that compels people to take you seriously, dies a slow, painful death every single time you make yourself excessively available. Every instant response, every plan you drop to accommodate someone else's fleeting convenience, every moment where you place others before yourself without them demonstrating that they have definitively earned it. That is not generosity or kindness. That is self-abandonment. And the most painful part of this dynamic is that people do not even value the immense energy you are freely giving. They expect it. They assume it is their due. They become actively annoyed and resentful when you suddenly cannot deliver the resource you have been providing for free all along. This is the unforgiving psychology of constant availability. It never creates gratitude. It rapidly and consistently creates entitlement. Breaking this ruinous pattern requires embracing something that most people are psychologically incapable of handling: the conscious decision to disappoint others. It means allowing messages to remain unanswered for a period. It means intentionally not showing up for non-essential demands. It means creating a visible, unapologetic space where there used to be your constant, predictable presence. This will initially feel profoundly wrong and induce deep guilt. You will worry intensely that people will judge you, thinking you have changed for the worse. You will anxiously wonder if you are simply being selfish. You must learn this truth. You are not being selfish. You are being sane. Because the dangerous alternative is spending your entire, finite life responding exclusively to other people's endless agendas while your own life slips away, unexamined and unfulfilled. The alternative is being the dependable person everyone can count on, while you, the most important person, can no longer rely on yourself. The ultimate alternative is reaching the end of your life and realizing with a devastating finality that you were always fully available for everyone in the world except the one person who desperately needed you most: yourself. You must internalize the mantra, "No is self-preservation." Principle 3. Persona versus individuation. There are fundamentally two versions of you that exist simultaneously in the world, and your journey of power is the process of killing the first to allow the second to emerge. The first version is the mask, the constructed social persona, the carefully edited version of yourself you created to survive the relentless demands of society. This is the version that is trained to smile at the precisely correct times, to speak only the socially acceptable things, and to behave meticulously according to the established expectations of the group. This version exists solely to be accepted, to fit in seamlessly, and above all, to never cause a problem or stir dissent. This polished, agreeable version is categorically not you. It is a ceaseless, exhausting performance. The second, authentic version is buried deep underneath that performance. It is raw, completely unfiltered, inherently untamed, and possessed of dangerous edges. This is the true self you have been suppressing and strategically hiding your entire life because you learned, early and painfully, that being absolutely real comes with immediate and severe consequences: rejection, harsh judgment, and isolation. So you retreated, and the mask became so utterly convincing that you eventually forgot you were even wearing it. This process of becoming who you actually are, instead of the person you pretend to be, is what psychologists term individuation. It is the psychological death of the false self and the uncompromising birth of the authentic self. And it requires one terrifying act most people will never perform: disappearing from the very social world that originally demanded the creation of the mask. Machiavelli observed that everyone sees what you merely appear to be, but only a precious few ever truly experience what you really are. He understood that the social persona is a necessary tool for navigating initial social waters, but becomes in existential danger the moment it fully replaces your identity. Because here is the lethal consequence of living through the mask for too long. You lose yourself completely and irrevocably. You devolve into a mere reflection of everyone else's expectations. You become a predictable puppet dancing to invisible strings that you can no longer even see or feel. Your thoughts cease to be authentically yours. Your decisions are no longer self-generated. Your entire existence becomes a reflexive reaction to external demands and pressures. You become controllable, you become predictable, and you become psychologically safe. And safety in the game of power is the absolute death of it. Individuation is, by its nature, dangerous and subversive. It demands that you reject the role society assigned you, that you ruthlessly question every single belief you inherited, and that you embrace the terrifying isolation of standing alone while everyone else rushes blindly to follow the herd. Most people simply cannot handle that level of internal pressure. They would rather wear the comfortable mask forever than face the existential terror of not knowing who they are without its reassuring presence. But if you are determined not to be most people, then strategic disappearance is the first, vital step in killing the persona. When you consciously withdraw from public view and social expectations, when you completely stop performing, when you refuse absolutely to play the predictable character everyone expects you to be, the mask begins to crack and crumble. This moment is terrifying because, without the mask, you are exposed, frighteningly vulnerable, and utterly undefined. But this raw exposure is also the birthplace of true freedom. In solitude, away from the constant noise, away from the relentless pressure of expectations, and away from the debilitating need to perpetually perform, you finally, inevitably, meet yourself. Not the version you fabricated to be liked, but the genuine, essential version that exists beneath all the years of conditioning. This authentic version is inherently uncomfortable for others. It has sharp edges and corners. It does not apologize for its own existence. It does not bend or soften itself to make other people feel comfortable. It absolutely does not care about being accepted by people who are only capable of accepting masks anyway. This version of you is, by definition, uncontrollable. And that, precisely, is the absolute point of the entire process. The moment you detach your self-worth from society's expectations, the moment you stop needing their approval, when you become completely willing to exist outside their limited understanding, you immediately become dangerous. Not dangerous in a violent way, but dangerous in a way that fundamentally threatens the entire, elaborate system of social control. Because the system is predicated entirely on conformity, on every single person playing their assigned, predictable role, and on people being far more terrified of social rejection than they are of self-suppression. The moment you stop being afraid of rejection, the system instantly loses its grip on you. This is why individuation is so exceptionally rare. Most people will never even attempt it. They will spend their entire lives endlessly refining the performance of the mask, making it more detailed and more convincing, futilely hoping that if they perform well enough, they will finally feel whole. They will not feel whole. The mask was never designed to make you whole. It was designed only to make you acceptable, and acceptable people have no real power. Intentionally disappearing from the social stage forces the inescapable, terrifying question, who are you when absolutely nobody is watching? When there is no audience left to perform for, when the vital feedback loop of approval is no longer available, that question for most people is psychologically devastating. They cannot exist without the constant external validation, without the comforting feedback loop of social acceptance, without someone else consistently telling them they are doing it right. But if you possess the discipline and courage to sit with that devastating question, if you can exist within the prolonged discomfort of not knowing the answer, if you can allow the false mask to die without instantly fabricating a replacement, something transformative shifts. You stop functioning as a mere reflection of the world. You become an independent source. You cease reacting to the constant external noise of the world. You begin, instead, creating your own. And the moment you walk back into society as your authentic self, untamed, unapologetic, and completely uncontrolled, people immediately feel the seismic change. They may not be able to articulate what is different, but they know instinctually that you are no longer playing by their rules. You are no longer desperately attempting to fit in. You are playing a completely different, unwritten game entirely. You are fundamentally declaring, "I am uncontrollable." Principle 4. Psychic energy and manipulation. Every single reaction you give to the world is a direct transfer of your precious energy. Every defensive argument, every detailed explanation, every emotional justification, every time you respond with genuine emotionality to someone's deliberate provocation, in that precise moment, you have actively and willingly handed over your power to them. This is the silent engine of manipulation at its most core level. The manipulator never wins the exchange by being factually correct. They win exclusively by successfully making you react. Because the nanosecond you engage in a reactive state, you are no longer the one in control. They are. They pushed a meticulously chosen button, and you predictably responded. You have been trained like a Pavlovian subject, and most people fail to even realize this process is happening to them. They operate under the illusion that they are standing up for themselves, valiantly defending their position, making their irrefutable case, or setting a firm boundary. They are, in reality, doing none of those things. They are simply dancing energetically to someone else's malicious music. Machiavelli understood the complex interplay of strategy and raw power, noting that the lion cannot protect himself from traps and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves, necessitating that one must be the fox to recognize the traps and the lion to frighten the wolves. The trap here is never the external situation itself. The true trap is your emotional investment in it. Manipulators function as psychic vampires. They feed exclusively on your reaction, your anger, your profound frustration, your desperate need to explain and justify yourself, your pathetic desire to be truly understood. Every emotional response you give is a delicious meal, and they are left starving without it. This is why silence is the single force that destroys them. Not because silence is a passive surrender, but because silence is an active, definitive refusal. It is the refusal to play their rigged game, the refusal to engage in their chaos, the refusal to give them the one thing they need to sustain themselves: your energy. Watch, with cold objectivity, what happens the moment you consciously stop reacting. When someone throws out calculated bait and you simply refuse to bite. When they provoke and you remain unnervingly calm and centered. When they angrily demand an immediate response and you give them nothing but a measured, empty pause. They will immediately escalate the situation. They will get louder. They will try harder. They will say worse and more desperate things. They do this because your reaction is their source of sustenance, and you have, with surgical precision, cut off their vital supply. This intentional lack of response is psychological starvation, and for them, it is brutal and debilitating. The entire framework of the manipulator collapses without your willing participation. Their power exists only and entirely because you willingly grant it to them. Remove your precious energy from their equation, and they are left screaming impotently into a vast, unresponding void. This is not a sign of weakness. It is a profound display of intelligence and emotional sovereignty. You are smart enough to recognize that some battles are completely worthless to fight. Not because you lack the capacity to win, but because there is literally nothing of value to win. The entire perverse game is designed with one single goal: to drain you entirely, ensuring you are too exhausted to pursue your own life. Here is the part of this discipline that requires the most ruthless self-control. Staying silent when every fiber of your being screams the need to respond. when they utter something completely untrue, when they twist your words with cynical accuracy, when they succeed in painting you as the villain. Your wounded ego will scream the need to defend itself, to set the record straight, to ensure that the public record reflects the exact truth. But that desire for justice is the deadliest part of the trap. The truth, factually speaking, does not matter one bit to the manipulator. They are not interested in facts or resolution. They are solely interested in your reaction. And the moment you begin defending yourself, you have already definitively lost the psychological battle, because now you are explaining, you are justifying, you are desperately proving, all of which sends the undeniable, pathetic signal that their fleeting opinion matters to you, that you need their understanding, that you are seeking their validation. You just gave them the power they craved. Strategic silence does the precise opposite. It communicates with crushing finality that their opinion is utterly irrelevant to your reality. It signals that you have no need to be understood by them or their audience. It states that their entire, desperate attempt to manipulate you is not even worthy of your breath or a single second of your consideration. This absence of engagement is maddening to the manipulator because they built their entire strategy around successfully triggering you, around making you deeply care, around pulling you into their constructed reality. Your absolute refusal to enter their reality means you remain securely in yours. And when viewed from your centered, high-ground reality, their tactics suddenly look pathetic, desperate, and entirely transparent. This decisive shift in perspective changes the entire nature of the game. You are no longer a participant in their play. You are a detached, objective observer. And observers, by definition, do not get manipulated. They watch the manipulation attempt unfold and simply choose not to engage. The psychic energy you conserve by consciously choosing not to react is energy you reclaim entirely for yourself. This is energy you can immediately invest in things that authentically matter, in your goals, in your growth, in building a reality instead of endlessly defending one. Manipulators steal years from people's lives, not with a single dramatic theft, but by trapping them in an endless, debilitating cycle of reaction, defending, explaining, arguing, and proving, all while the only precious thing, life itself, passes by unnoticed. You break this draining cycle by recognizing it for the predictable game it is, a game you are under no obligation to ever play. Every single time you choose silence over an explosive reaction, you are training yourself in the mastery of emotional sovereignty. You are proving undeniably to yourself that external chaos does not have to and will not create internal chaos. That someone else's dysfunction, their insecurity, and their desperate tactics do not have to become yours. This is mastery. Not mastery over them or the external situation, but mastery over yourself. And self-mastery is the only form of power that is truly unshakable and ultimately matters. Affirm this undeniable truth. Silence starves manipulation. Principle 5. The power of silence. Silence is arguably the most profoundly misunderstood, yet most potent weapon in all human interaction. People mistakenly perceive silence as mere absence, as an empty void. It is anything but. Silence is presence concentrated into its most potent, unforgiving form. Words, by their very nature, scatter and diffuse your power. They reveal your hand, they arm your adversaries with ammunition, and they actively create endless opportunities for misunderstanding, misinterpretation, and subtle manipulation. Silence, by contrast, does none of that. It is an impenetrable shield. Silence operates as a perfect, flawless mirror. It reflects with harsh accuracy whatever internal reality the other person brings to the interaction. And what people bring into a silent exchange is always, without exception, profoundly revealing. Watch what happens when you intentionally fall quiet, when you stop rushing to justify or explain yourself, when you consciously refuse to fill every gap in the conversation with comfortable noise, when you simply allow the space to exist without rushing to instantly cover it up with words. People become deeply, profoundly uncomfortable. In that vacuum, they are forced to project their own internal landscape, their assumptions, their deep-seated fears, their buried guilt, their hidden insecurities. They end up unwittingly confessing everything to you without you ever having to say a single word. Machiavelli famously stated that it is better to be feared than loved if one cannot successfully achieve both. But here is the deeper, more nuanced lesson. Silence creates both fear and fascination simultaneously. It does this because people cannot categorize or control what they cannot fully understand, and they cannot fundamentally understand a person who embraces strategic silence. They are accustomed to people who rush to explain, who desperately justify, who vehemently defend, who need to be understood and approved of. You, in your potent silence, communicate that you require none of that external validation, and this self-sufficiency terrifies them. This is not the silence of weakness or shutting down because you lack words. This is the deliberate, calculated choice to withhold, to allow your complete absence of words to generate exponentially more impact and weight than any flood of words ever could. Strategic silence possesses immense psychological weight. It communicates undeniable authority without aggression. It signals that you owe absolutely no one an explanation for your being, that your complex internal world is private and inaccessible, and that access to your thoughts requires far more than mere curiosity or a petulant demand. This refusal to engage drives people to the point of insanity. They desperately want in. They want to know exactly what you are thinking. They want to crack your code. They want you to speak immediately so they can categorize you, so they can understand you, and ultimately so they can control you. Your stubborn silence denies them all of it, and in that absolute denial, you become immeasurably powerful. True power is not about dominating the conversation. It is about completely dominating your own presence. The individual who speaks the least often speaks the loudest, because their words carry a disproportionate weight due to their rarity. Their opinions, when finally given, are treated as significant because they are not constantly dispersed and cheapened. You have seen this dynamic play out countless times. The person who talks non-stop in meetings becomes irritating background noise, easily filtered out. But the person who sits quietly, listening with deliberate intensity, and then speaks only once, commanding the room, everyone stops and listens with rapt attention. Scarcity creates measurable value. This is a law that applies just as forcefully to your words as it does to anything else in life. But strategic silence goes far deeper than simply speaking less. It is fundamentally about creating a powerful psychological distance. When you steadfastly refuse to engage verbally, you force people to reckon with your absence and the vacuum you created, instead of comfortably dealing with your facile explanation. Your silence becomes its own immutable language. And unlike words, silence cannot be argued with, cannot be debated into submission, and cannot be twisted or misrepresented. It simply is. This state of being makes people profoundly uncomfortable because humans are inherently linguistic creatures. We are taught to solve every problem through communication. We build understanding through dialogue. We attempt to resolve conflict through endless discussion. Silence rejects all of that noise. It states unequivocally that some things do not require discussion, some conflicts do not necessitate resolution, and some misunderstandings are perfectly acceptable and, in fact, advantageous left misunderstood. This is psychological heresy in a world that mindlessly worships communication. where every single problem is supposedly solvable with a verbal solution, and where the phrase, "we need to talk," is regarded as the universal answer to everything. Sometimes talking only makes things exponentially worse. Sometimes offering a detailed explanation only weakens your core position. Sometimes the most dominating, most powerful response available is absolutely none at all. Furthermore, silence acts as a superior defense mechanism. It protects you. Every word you speak into the void is a piece of data, information that people can analyze, use against you, and weaponize. Your carefully considered opinions become soft attack vectors. Your explanations become evidence for your weaknesses. Your vulnerability, when revealed, becomes immediate ammunition. Silence gives them precisely nothing. And nothing, or emptiness, is the single hardest concept to successfully attack. People will inevitably try to provoke you violently out of your silence. They will hurl accusations, calling you cold, emotionally distant, or manipulative. They will state that you are actively avoiding, running away, or being deliberately unfair. Let them waste their breath saying it all. Their obvious discomfort with your silence reveals infinitely more about their own desperation and need for control than anything you could ever say reveals about you. People who are truly comfortable with themselves do not hysterically demand explanations. Secure people have no need for constant verbal reassurance. Confident people never feel fundamentally threatened by quietude. Only those who rely absolutely on words to manipulate and control. You get legitimately upset when the words are intentionally removed from the equation. Your deliberate silence exposes their tactics with brutal clarity. It reveals exactly how much they depended on your willingness to perpetually engage. It exposes the extent of the power they derived from successfully pulling you into the endless, meaningless verbal exchanges you never needed to be a part of. When you remove yourself entirely from those exchanges, not by announcing it dramatically but simply by stopping the participation, their entire flimsy strategy collapses instantly. They are left arguing with silence, and nobody, absolutely nobody, wins an argument against silence. This is dominance without aggression, a display of pure power without the mess of confrontation, and a victory achieved without the necessity of battle. Machiavelli himself would unquestionably approve of this refined strategy. Internalize this. My silence speaks. Principle 6. Conscious unavailability. There is a phrase that must be excised from your vocabulary, a social narcotic that keeps you dependent and weak. I'm always here if you need me. It sounds superficially noble, supportive, and kind, which is why it is so insidious. It is actually a declaration of self-destruction wrapped tightly in a virtue signal. Because making yourself perpetually, constantly available does not elevate your value. It actively reduces you to a mere utility. You become something people feel comfortable using only when it is convenient for them, and instantly forgetting the moment you are not needed. This is the critical juncture where most individuals fail. They dangerously confuse accessibility with importance. They falsely believe that being easy to reach translates into genuine appreciation. They operate under the delusion that the more they freely give, the more valuable they will consequently become. Fundamental economics, however, teaches a harsher lesson, and human psychology follows these basic economic principles, whether we acknowledge it or not. Value is determined solely by scarcity, always. Things that are found everywhere in limitless abundance possess no inherent worth. Things that are rare, difficult to find, and finite become precious. Your time, your attention, and your very presence fall under this cold law. When these resources are unlimited, they are worthless. When they are consciously and strategically limited, they are, effectively, gold. Conscious unavailability is the deliberate decision to make yourself rare on purpose. Not because you are busy with trivial tasks, and certainly not because you are running away from people, but because you possess the profound self-respect to understand that access to you must be earned, never assumed. Machiavelli advised, with characteristic ruthlessness, to never appear too common. He was not advocating for superficial snobbery. He was advocating for strategic scarcity. He understood that the prince who mingles indiscriminately with the peasants daily loses his mystique, his psychological power, and his undeniable authority. You do not need to be a prince for this core principle to apply. When you are always available, always instantly responsive, always willing to drop everything at a moment's notice, you actively train people to expect it as their right. They stop perceiving your availability as a generously given gift. They rapidly begin to see it as a baseline obligation. Your natural generosity metastasizes into their debilitating entitlement. Then, watch the predictable dynamic that explodes the moment you genuinely cannot be available, when you are actually busy with important self-directed work, or when you simply need to focus exclusively on yourself. They become instantly annoyed, profoundly disappointed, and sometimes even overtly angry. How dare you not be there when they need you? You're always available. What changed? What changed is their sense of entitlement grew unchecked as they became accustomed to extracting value from you without any necessary thought of reciprocation. Conscious unavailability is the firewall that prevents this destructive dynamic before it can even ignite. It establishes from the absolute beginning that your time comes with non-negotiable conditions, that access to you requires something significant in return: respect, genuine reciprocity, and careful consideration. This is not the act of being selfish. This is the fundamental expression of self-respect. And self-respect is the single absolute bedrock upon which all forms of sustainable power are built. When you become consciously, strategically unavailable, you fundamentally force people to think about you in a new, uncomfortable way. They can no longer simply assume you will be there for them. They are forced to actively consider whether what they are demanding is genuinely worth the expenditure of your time. They have to critically evaluate whether they have, in fact, earned access to your presence. This rigorous new standard automatically filters your life and relationships. People who do not inherently respect your time will quickly remove themselves from your orbit. They will go find someone easier, someone more willing to be used. Good. Let them go without comment. The select few who remain are the people who fully grasp that valuable things are never free. They understand that your presence is a privilege, not a right. They see that time spent with you is something to genuinely appreciate and value, not merely expect. These are the only people who are truly worth having in your redefined orbit anyway. But here is where the application of this principle becomes the most psychologically uncomfortable. Becoming consciously unavailable means you must be willing to disappoint people. It means definitively saying no to attractive opportunities and demands. It means watching certain lesser opportunities pass you by entirely. It means fully accepting that some people, the entitled and the superficial, will inevitably call you selfish, emotionally distant, or cold. They absolutely will. Let them call you whatever they need to, because the true, devastating alternative is spending your entire existence being available to everyone except the single person who matters most: yourself. Every single yes you give to someone else's agenda is a deliberate no to your own life and needs. Every time you make yourself available when your body and mind cry out for rest, you are actively choosing their needs over your own well-being. Every single moment spent being excessively accessible is a moment you are not spending building the deliberate, self-authored life you actually want. This is not a balanced life. This is a slow, self-imposed sacrifice. And sacrifice that is not genuinely reciprocated is nothing less than slow psychological suicide. Conscious unavailability is the powerful act of reclaiming your existence. It sends the clear message that your time is yours first and foremost. Your energy is yours to allocate according to your own values. Your presence is a deliberate choice you make to give, and never anyone else's inherent right to take. This intentional shift creates a powerful change in how people approach you. They stop demanding and start respectfully asking. They stop assuming and start genuinely appreciating. This is not achieved by announcing a new set of rules. It is achieved because you resolutely embodied them. People only respond to consistent, undeniable behavior, not mere verbal declarations. You can tell someone you are no longer always available, and they will forget your words in a single day. But show them, through consistent, unyielding action, that your time is protected and non-negotiable, and they will learn the new rules fast. Some, inevitably, will refuse to learn. They will keep pushing, keep demanding, and keep expecting you to bend your will. These individuals are providing you with a valuable lesson. They do not respect you. They only respect easy, consistent access to your resources. The instant you protect those resources, they reveal the true, transactional nature of their relationship with you. Conscious unavailability exposes these shallow dynamics. It separates, with surgical clarity, the people who genuinely value you from the people who only value what you provide. And that distinction matters more for your future than most people can ever comprehend. Because a life spent surrounded by takers is a life lived in permanent, hollow emptiness. No matter how many people surround you, no matter how desperately needed you feel, you are merely a resource being slowly drained to exhaustion. Conscious unavailability stops the drain. It makes your presence mean something significant again. It makes your time valuable again. It makes you someone who must be earned and appreciated, rather than someone always freely available. And here is the strangest, most counterintuitive part of the entire process. When you become less available, the quality of your interactions skyrockets dramatically, because people show up entirely differently when they know, definitively, that your time is limited and valuable. They become more present, more appreciative, and far more intentional with the moments they have. They stop wasting your time because they are acutely aware they might not get any more of it. Scarcity creates quality. Abundance creates carelessness. This profound principle also applies to your own relationship with yourself. When you rigorously protect your time, when you make yourself unavailable to the world on a regular basis, you finally create the necessary mental space to think, to create, to build, and to simply exist without the need to constantly perform. You cease being a reflexive reaction machine and evolve into the deliberate, powerful creator of your own existence. That is not selfishness. That is sanity. Internalize this. Access to me is earned. Principle 7. Rebirth through solitude. Solitude, true solitude, terrifies the vast majority of people, not primarily because it is painful, but because it is relentlessly, brutally revealing. When you are alone, truly and uncomfortably alone, stripped of distractions, devoid of the constant input of noise, you are violently forced to confront your entire self. The long-avoided thoughts, the agonizing truths you have been systematically suppressing, the devastating gap between the person you have passively become and the person you were always meant to be. Most people simply cannot withstand this internal pressure. They frantically fill every single moment with noise, social media feeds, endless messages, streaming shows, constant music, anything to successfully avoid the profound silence. Because in that silence, they might be forced to face the terrifying fact that they do not actually like the person they have become. But solitude is not a punishment. It is a purification. Every moment you spend in strategic solitude is a moment spent burning away the inauthentic, the conditioning, the masks, the borrowed beliefs, and all the parts of you that only exist because society demanded them. What remains after this intense, purifying fire is the core of what is truly real. Machiavelli noted that men are driven by two principal impulses, either by love or by fear. But there is a third powerful impulse he implicitly understood, the drive for authenticity. The urgent, undeniable need to become exactly what you truly are, instead of the predictable construct everyone else needs you to be. That profound transformation occurs exclusively in solitude, because society acts as a distorted funhouse mirror that only reflects back a warped version of you, the version that conveniently fits, the version that poses no threat to the established status quo, the version that makes other people comfortably secure. Solitude violently shatters that mirror. In the complete absence of any external reflection or validation, you are brutally forced to generate your own sense of self-worth, to define your own identity without any reference whatsoever to anyone else's opinion. This necessary process is brutal and uncompromising. Most people terminate it, aborting the process within mere days. They rapidly convince themselves they are lonely, that isolation is unhealthy, that they desperately need connection. What they truly need at that moment is to simply avoid the necessity of self-examination. Real solitude, the kind that truly transforms, is not defined by physical isolation. You can be surrounded by people and still achieve solitude if you are emotionally unavailable, if you have intentionally withdrawn your energy from the expectation of external validation. This is the loneliness of the strong, the deliberate, self-possessed choice to exist separate from the herd mentality, to think thoughts that have not been socially approved, to pursue goals that are not understood by the masses, to become a person that society absolutely did not design or intend. It is lonely because you are no longer competing for the same worthless prizes, no longer following the same petty rules, and no longer seeking the same fleeting approval as everyone else. You are on a different, unwritten path entirely, and most people will never ever understand that path. They will lash out, calling you cold, emotionally distant, or saying with nostalgic pity, "You're not the person you used to be." They are absolutely correct. You are not that person. You systematically killed that person in solitude. This psychological death is absolutely necessary for the life you seek. The old self, the one built on the need to please others, on fitting in, on being easily acceptable, must die for the authentic, powerful self to finally emerge. And it dies slowly, in quiet moments, in prolonged periods of intentional unavailability, in the uncomfortable, vital space between who you were and who you are aggressively becoming. Solitude is the furnace. You are the metal. What comes out the other side of this intense heat is harder, exponentially sharper, and rigorously refined. But the process is anything but comfortable. You will question every decision you have made. You will doubt your choices, wondering if withdrawing was a fatal mistake. You will feel the powerful magnetic pull to revert to how things used to be. Do not succumb to it. That pull is merely weakness tragically disguised as a need for connection. It is the part of you that is still desperately addicted to external validation, that still needs social approval, that still clings to the belief that your worth must come from other people. You must sit with the discomfort. Let the internal friction teach you the new laws of your existence. Because on the other side of that grinding discomfort is something most people never, ever experience. Self-reliance. Not the mundane, practical kind, but the deep, foundational, psychological kind. The kind where you genuinely require no one's opinion to know exactly who you are. Where your sense of self is not and cannot be dependent on social feedback. where you can exist completely independent of whether anyone else understands or approves of your being. This is freedom, true freedom, not the fake freedom of simply doing whatever you want, but the deep existential freedom of being whoever you fundamentally are, without apology or explanation. And it is a freedom that is earned exclusively through solitude, because solitude violently removes all the psychological crutches, all the false validation, and all the constant distractions that kept you from confronting yourself. What you are forced to confront in solitude might not be pretty or flattering. You will see your weaknesses, your self-sabotaging patterns, your clever ways of avoiding genuine responsibility, the lies you have been telling yourself, and the ways you have been complicit in your own limitation. But you will also see, with devastating clarity, your massive untapped potential, the parts of you that were suppressed, the dormant strength you never dared to use, the thoughts you never voiced, the powerful life you never built, because you were too busy maintaining pathetic, draining relationships that did not serve your growth. Solitude gives you the sacred, necessary space to fundamentally rebuild, not back into the weak person you were, but into something entirely new, something designed by you and for you, according to your actual core values instead of your inherited external ones. This profound rebuilding process demands time. It is not a weekend retreat. It is months, perhaps years, of consistent separation from the noise, of ruthlessly protecting your mental space, and of refusing to let others colonize your thoughts with their insignificant, shallow agendas. During this necessary, silent time, you will definitively lose people. This is guaranteed. You will lose the people who are only attached to the old, compliant version of you, the people who directly benefited from your easy availability, and the people who liked you better when you were completely easy to control. Good. Those were never, truly, your people anyway. The small, select group who remain, or the powerful individuals you attract after this transformation, are fundamentally different. They are not there for what you can give them. They are there entirely because of who you unapologetically are, and that person is, finally, authentic. This is the rebirth, not a vague metaphor, but an actual, verifiable, psychological death and resurrection. The person who emerges from sustained solitude is not the person who humbly entered it. They are colder, sharper, infinitely more focused, less interested in seeking approval, less affected by petty criticism, and less willing to compromise on the things that matter. They are harder to manipulate because they spent time alone with their own mind and learned the fierce discipline of trusting it. They are impossible to control because they have defined their own values and committed their being to them. They are harder to break because they have already been broken down by the truth and rebuilt themselves stronger than before. This state of being is what Machiavelli truly meant when he spoke of being both a lion and a fox. The crucible of solitude makes you the lion, powerful, self-confident, and undeniably dangerous. The ruthless experience of the process makes you the fox, smart, strategic, and acutely able to recognize every single psychological trap laid before you. When you eventually return to the world after this deep, internal transformation, people feel the palpable difference immediately. You are no longer performing a character, no longer seeking external validation, no longer unnecessarily explaining your choices. You are simply existing powerfully, unapologetically, and independently. And your previous absence, the long, silent time you spent in solitude, now becomes your most potent weapon. Because people know definitively that you possess the courage to disappear again. You have done it successfully before, and you will, without hesitation, do it again. Access to you is no longer guaranteed. It is a variable you control. This conscious, strategic understanding makes your presence supremely valuable, your time exponentially precious, and your selective attention deeply meaningful. You have successfully completed the profound transformation from a passive resource to an active force. From someone who merely reacts predictably to the world, you have evolved into someone who shapes and dictates its terms. And this entire rebirth started the moment you found the profound courage to disappear. So, here is where we stand now. You have been given 7 undeniable laws, 7 principles that permanently separate those who are routinely used from those who successfully hold power. 7 brutal, clarifying truths that most people will spend their entire lives frantically avoiding, precisely because these truths are so inherently uncomfortable. The choice requires you to accept intense loneliness in direct exchange for absolute authenticity, to intentionally become someone that society will not fully understand and might actively reject. Most individuals will never make that difficult trade. They will inevitably choose comforting compliance over genuine power, shallow connection over clarifying solitude, and the fleeting warmth of being liked over the profound respect of being truly feared. They will remain trapped in their draining, predictable patterns, always available, always explaining, always desperately seeking approval from small-minded people who do not deserve the authority to grant it. They will spend their lives wondering why nothing ever fundamentally changes, why people constantly take advantage of their goodwill, why their internal worth never seems to match their ceaseless effort. And they will never grasp the profound simplicity of the answer, "Ow." They made themselves too common. You are different, or at least you now possess the knowledge to become so. You are now in possession of information that changes the entire nature of the game, the unshakable understanding that absence is the ultimate creator of value, that withdrawal is never weakness but a declaration of strength, and that strategic unavailability is self-respect made visibly manifest. But information, cold and theoretical, changes absolutely nothing. Action does. And the necessary action is simple but psychically brutal. Disappear. Not forever, and not in a dramatic self-pitying exit, but strategically and with cold calculation. Stop being so consistently, pathetically available. Stop needlessly explaining yourself to people who would never understand your depth anyway. Stop hemorrhaging your precious energy into situations that only serve to drain you dry. Stop the exhausting performance for an audience that is not even truly paying attention. Pull back your presence. Get profoundly quiet. Guard your time like it is the most valuable, non-renewable resource you possess because, without question, it is. Watch the predictable reactions that follow. Some people will panic intensely. Some will react with anger and accusation. Some will disappear from your life completely and instantly. Perfect. Their self-removal was the intended outcome of the exercise. Because the select few people who stay, the ones who adapt to your new boundaries, who respect the profound change, who value you enough to genuinely earn access, those are your people. Everyone else was simply a user, benefiting from the old version of you, the version that instantly said yes to every demand, the version that felt the pathetic need to explain itself to everyone, the version that desperately needed external approval. That version is dead now, or at the very least, it should be permanently retired. What relentlessly replaces it is someone else entirely, someone harder to reach, harder to manipulate, and exponentially harder to predict. Someone who understands with absolute certainty that true power does not come from being everywhere and accessible. It comes exclusively from being supremely selective about where you choose to show up. This transformation will not be celebrated universally. The world, by its nature, prefers and rewards compliant, predictable people.